media-wise, our world, publicly, we haven't had a real understanding of what this injury is.
You get a killer who gets a trust fund, right? $230 million. Then he's like, hey, you want to go out and get a job? He's like, not really.
No. I'm going to admit something to you guys that may get me canceled, but I'm a huge Deshaun Watson fan, at least when he was playing for the Houston Texans, at least when he was in Clemson. I even drafted him late in my fantasy football league this year because I felt like this year he was almost certain to return to form. And now that he hasn't, there's been a lot of questions in regards to Deshaun Watson and his motive and his incentive to play. There's a lot to break down here, but no matter what happens, I want you guys to know one thing is true. The Deshaun Watson situation on the Cleveland Browns is officially a failure, and I'm going to tell you why. Before we get to the content, make sure you drop a like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help the channel grow. Now that we got all that out of the way, today's video is sponsored by Alpha Lion. If you're struggling with trying to lose weight, then you're not alone. As we get older, our energy and metabolism slow down, making it harder and harder to lose the stubborn pudge that just won't budge. Look, I don't know about you, but I'll take any advantage that I can get that helps boost my energy, reduce my cravings, and get rid of this dad bod. Which is why Alpha Lion sent me their Dad Bod Destroyer Stack. Guys, I'm gonna be honest, it's been a minute since I last took a pre-workout and hit the gym, and I've been taking their Super Burn Human pre-workout, and woo! This makes me sweat. So the first step is to take Superhuman Burn. This is a 2-in-1 fat burning drink you take in the morning before workouts to help burn fat and build muscle. The formula provides the best of both worlds by boosting energy, focus, and performance while also elevating your total amount of calories burned with every rep or step. We have this formula called SXT Energy. Trust me, you can feel this stuff working. I'm amazed at how long lasting the energy was. It lasted far past my workout. I'm still feeling the energy as I'm recording this video currently. Once you're done with their pre-workout, then you gotta take their
Cravings Killer.
You take the Cravings Killer before meals twice a day. It's a 100% all-natural appetite and craving suppressant to help keep your diet on track by drastically reducing your appetite by up to 69%. I already noticed a huge difference in my compulsive snacking addiction. I no longer crush as much beef bulgogi whenever I go to Korean barbecue with my boys. Finally, step 3 is to pop a night burn before bed. This is like a fat burner plus sleep aid that helps ignite your metabolism while you sleep. I slept like a fat burning baby. And right now, when you click the link in the description down below, you'll get 64% off of the Dad Bod Destroyer Stack plus free shipping. For a limited time only, get 64% off of the Dad Bod Destroyer Stack by using our exclusive link, alphalion.com/microphone, or clicking the link in the description down below to get 64% off of the Dad Bod Destroyer Stack. Thank you, Alpha Lion, for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? During the 2022 offseason, part of the craziness that ensued was Deshaun Watson officially being ruled to have no criminal charges levied against him. Once it was clear that Deshaun Watson wasn't going to see jail time, immediately he started meeting with other football teams. He primarily met with teams that were in the NFC South for some reason. I mean, he met with the Carolina Panthers, New Orleans Saints, the Atlanta Falcons, and briefly with the Cleveland Browns. And all he had to say to the Cleveland Browns during that first meeting was,
Off. I don't want to play for you guys.
Now, this meeting was enough to piss off Baker Mayfield into saying a huge farewell to the Cleveland Browns on his Instagram. But as Deshaun Watson continued his tour, the Cleveland Browns called him one more time and said, hey, how about we give you an offer that you can't refuse? How about we give you the first and only fully guaranteed contract in the entire NFL? Now, it's important to note that Deshaun Watson, up until this point, had recently signed a contract extension when he was with the Houston Texans. And this is something that isn't really discussed, but in the 2020 offseason, he signed a 4-year, $177.5 million contract extension with $111 million guaranteed. But that was before all the craziness. And to be honest, at least on the football field, Deshaun Watson looked like the real deal. I mean, again, I'm a huge fan of Deshaun Watson, and as a fan of his work, work, I thought it was incredibly impressive that throughout all of the Houston Texans' ineptitude, including following the season that they traded DeAndre Hopkins for David Johnson and brought in Brandon Cooks, Deshaun Watson gave us his best season as a NFL player to date, throwing for over 4,800 passing yards, 33 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and adding another 444 rushing yards on the ground. And then the allegations were levied against him. He didn't play throughout the 2021 season, but it was clear that Deshaun Watson was a star in the NFL. The Houston Texans made the most out of this situation. Remember, Texans fans were still irate at the way Bill O'Brien decimated this roster, and they didn't feel that much more optimism now that they went after Nick Caserio, who also worked underneath Bill Belichick, which just made Texans fans and Deshaun Watson himself feel like the Texans were just repeating the same cycle of trying to chase what the New England Patriots had. With that being said, Deshaun Watson demanded a trade following the 2020 season, but as a result of the allegations, he didn't really get the opportunity to get traded until the summer of 2022. And here's the thing, man, the summer of 2022 was a wild summer. I mean, in one summer, we saw Tyreek Hill, AJ Brown, Devontae Adams all get traded. We saw Tom Brady retire, then unretire. We saw Russell Wilson get traded for 2 first-round picks, Shelby Harris, Drew Lock, Noah Fant, and 2 second-round picks. And somehow, some way, in my opinion, I think the Deshaun Watson trade might be the worst trade out of all of them. You see, whenever it comes to roster construction in the NFL, we have enough empirical data to understand what works and what doesn't work. Clearly, if you want to contend for a Super Bowl, if you're rebuilding from the ground up, it's best to build from the outside in. Meaning in the Kansas City Chiefs case, the very first player that they took in their rebuild was a left tackle, Eric Fisher, granted in a very weak draft class. The next thing they did was they traded for a bridge quarterback, Alex Smith. Well, theoretically speaking, they traded for Alex Smith first, and then a month and a half later, they drafted Eric Fisher, but same offseason, okay? And then while you have that bridge quarterback in place, you fill in the pieces around him. That's when you establish your number 1 wide receiver. That's when you try to add pieces on defense, try to figure out a scheme, and then you select your quarterback, who could theoretically start this year, or he could actually sit down and watch the bridge QB operate. And the team that is currently doing this is the Detroit Lions. You're seeing the Detroit Lions execute this masterfully by trading Matthew Stafford for 2 first-round picks, a 3rd-round pick, and Jared Goff. The Lions were in no rush to draft a QB. They had the luxury to sit back, draft players like Penei Sewell, Jamison Williams, find Amon-Ra St. Brown late in the draft, very similarly to how the Chiefs found Tyreek Hill late in the draft. Draft Aiden Hutchinson. They had so many picks that they spent a first-round pick on Jahmyr Gibbs. And Jared Goff could be their quarterback of the future, or they could select their quarterback of the future and have him watch Jared Goff for the next couple of years. That's the way you build a team. The contrast and the opposite of how to build that team is what the Carolina Panthers did. They have no pieces on the offensive end of the football anymore. I don't even know what happened to that offensive line because they spent a very high pick on Ike Ekwonu, who was regressing mightily, yet they decided to trade up to select Bryce Young. And by the time Bryce Young's rookie scale contract expires, the Carolina Panthers are either going to select a new quarterback or they're going to have to extend him and pay him a top 5 QB salary, depending on how well he performs. At the same time, we wouldn't be doing the Cleveland Browns justice if we didn't tell you where they were coming from. The Cleveland Browns are infamous for having been searching for a quarterback ever since they recreated the Cleveland Browns in 1999. I mean, you've all seen that famous jersey with all the quarterbacks' names crossed off, and it seemed like this team was very close with Baker Mayfield. And the problem was Baker Mayfield was very inconsistent with the Cleveland Browns. In his rookie year, he was awesome. They get him Freddie Kitchens in his sophomore year, and he takes a step back. They ditch Freddie Kitchens and bring in Kevin Stefanski in his 3rd year, and he has his best season to date. In his final year with the Cleveland Browns, they needed to make their decision on him. Is this your quarterback of the future? Because his rookie scale contract is about to expire. Do you extend a 5th-year option to Baker Mayfield to try to figure that out and have an additional year of his rookie scale contract? Well, in Baker Mayfield's final year, you had to deal with his wide receiver one's dad calling him out, a nagging shoulder injury that divided the Cleveland Browns fan base in regards to their opinion on him. And at the end of the day, it wouldn't matter because the Browns wouldn't make it to the playoffs anyways. Meanwhile, the other aspects of the Browns team was set. They had a suffocating defense built around players like Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward. They had an established running game. And when you pair that established running game with a dual threat QB like Deshaun Watson, even if Deshaun Watson's 1 year removed from football, Deshaun Watson is the missing piece, theoretically speaking. So with that being said, the Browns decided to move on from Baker Mayfield. And if you wanted to play Captain Hindsight, the intelligent decision here probably would have been to extend the 5th-year option out to Baker Mayfield and see how he plays with a fully healthy season. But in this case, the Browns probably looked at the scenario as we're going all in to get our franchise QB. There's a huge problem though. You see, the Cleveland Browns sent 3 first-round picks, a 3rd-round pick, and a 4th-round pick to the Houston Texans for Deshaun Watson. That's not all they did. They signed Deshaun Watson to a 5-year, $230 million fully guaranteed contract. And before we even get to his play, by the way, this contract dooms them from the start, because in year 1, Deshaun Watson was suspended for 11 games. So really, all you have is year 2, and then Deshaun Watson's cap really starts to handicap the Cleveland Browns. Next year, Deshaun Watson is scheduled to count $64 million against the cap. This is the largest in NFL history for one player. Now, the Cleveland Browns do have the ability to restructure this deal, but the problem here is your ability to build a contending team around Deshaun Watson is severely handicapped. And even tacking voidable years onto the end wouldn't have been enough to create the space necessary to build a competitive team around him, even with the expected generous growth in the salary cap year over year. Watson's contract as constructed could still cover about 1/4 of the 2024 cap. The Browns were forced to rework Myles Garrett's contract and Joel Bitonio's contract this past summer. It still doesn't help. Now, this is very painful considering the fact that the Browns are clearly a very capable team. This defense was able to hand the San Francisco 49ers their first loss of the year and Brock Purdy his worst game of the season, despite having PJ Walker under center. If you have a quarterback like Deshaun Watson playing like prime Deshaun Watson, then that's even better. And maybe you can make the most out of the years where his cap hit isn't that much of a factor. Like this year, this is the last year. Next year is when the $64 million cap hit comes into play. Take a look at Deshaun Watson's statistical output. He, for the most part, has completed around 68 or 67% of his passes, except for his rookie year where he only played in 6 games. But last year, when he returned from the suspension, he completed 58% of his passes. Now, at the time, the common argument for Deshaun Watson was he looked rusty. And I will admit, I was one of those people. I said, okay.
He looks rusty. It's too quick to say this trade was a horrific mistake.
And then this year came around. This year, throughout 4 games, Deshaun Watson has completed 61.7% of his passes. He's thrown 4 touchdowns for 683 passing yards. I want to make that clear. Deshaun Watson has a QBR of 41.9. There's no question that the team around Deshaun Watson is a Super Bowl contender. There's no question Kevin Stefanski is probably the best head coach the Cleveland Browns have ever had since returning to the NFL in 1999. No question. The scheme makes sense. He has a wide receiver 1 in Amari Cooper that's dependable. They went out and got a really good wide receiver 2 in Elijah Moore. His offensive line is pretty solid. His defense is amongst one of the best in the NFL. Deshaun Watson is the one that is holding this team back, and they mortgaged their future for him. Now, the common narrative now is the reason why Deshaun Watson hasn't been able to play is because he's had a shoulder strain, a rotator cuff injury, which I'm a little sensitive about because, well, it's a very common weightlifting injury, and it's something that I've had a couple times throughout my life. But it's pretty mysterious because even before this shoulder strain, he hasn't really looked like himself. He hasn't really thrown the ball with as much velocity.
No, it's not so much of the pain. It's mostly if I can throw the football. The pain, I can deal with certain pain, tolerance. But if I can't control the football, I can't throw the football with no velocity. If I can't throw the football more than a certain amount of yards, then like I said before, then I don't want to handicap the team because then I can't get the ball downfield and I can't get the ball outside the numbers and things like that. So like I said, that was a couple weeks ago, but the progress and the arrow is definitely upward, and we just gonna continue to just attack it each and every day.
And even Ian Rappaport admits that there's some mystery to this injury.
Because this started off with a report is like, it's a shoulder bruise, watch, it should be fine. And then we thought he was fine, and then he warmed up to play. And it turns out he was a month from playing when he warmed up and we thought he would play. So I'm not saying this is something that internally was diagnosed improperly. Externally, media-wise, our world, publicly, we haven't had a real understanding of what this injury is until probably early this week. I mean,
now, here's the thing. I do agree that the velocity on his throwing has been off ever since he returned to the NFL, but his vision is also off. He's making bad reads. That's not a rotator cuff problem. And the craziest part is Deshaun Watson has looked okay to play on a multitude of occasions, but Kevin Stefanski kept him out to protect his franchise QB, which is leading to a brand new narrative. People think that Deshaun Watson has lost his love for football or his incentive to play because he has a fully guaranteed $230 million contract. Originally, that narrative came from Brady Quinn, who says this.
Everyone else's the medical opinion just clears him pretty much. I mean, it's like, well, it's kind of similar to this. You get a killer who gets a trust fund, right? $230 million. Then he's like, hey, you want to go out and get a job? He's like, not really.
No.
I've got $230 million coming. I'm good. That's what it kind of feels like.
This even resulted in a spat between Brady Quinn and Deshaun Watson's trainer, Quincy Avery, who said, Brady, I'm gonna be real, you don't know what the you were talking about, and sit behind a microphone gossiping like a little high school chick. Brady Quinn responded by saying, come talk anytime you want in person, open invitation. Quincy Avery said, I just seen you Saturday. I don't have anything I want to talk to you about. I'm telling you that you are talking about things that you don't know. Talking on another man who doesn't know you is weak. Brady Quinn responded to this saying, LOL, well, I didn't see you. Quincy Avery said, point being. And then Brady Quinn responded by saying, how about we massage this conversation and get it to a happy ending? Does that sound satisfactory? I have to admit, I think Quincy Avery is making a very valid point here because Brady Quinn decided to make a joke about the situation. This is Deshaun Watson's response to those allegations.
None of those national people know me. They don't talk to me. So why would anybody listen to any of that stuff? All that is speculation. So if it ain't coming from me, then all the other bullshit. So.
Now, when Deshaun Watson was asked what the time frame was for his return, this is also what he had to say.
Doctors typically say, pitchers and baseball guys, and all the research that we done did. But I mean, it can be longer. I don't know. We just don't know until the staff, till the medical staff, till the coaching staff, till myself feel very, very comfortable that I can go out there and be the quarterback. People saw in Tennessee. Then we just gotta, take it day by day. And I think that's what Kevin has been saying, and that's what he's been trying to say. There's no certain timeline on certain injuries. Some, people bodies react differently. And some people, way they, come back react differently. So it might be shorter, it might be longer. And that's why I said it could be tomorrow, it could be next week. I don't know. We just have to take it day by day.
So this is without a doubt the Cleveland Browns' worst nightmare. I mean, it's not what I was expecting. I was at the very minimum expecting good play from Deshaun Watson upon him returning to the NFL. I understood when he was rusty in year one. There is a part of me that's wondering if he's hiding behind a I'm injured excuse in year two. But for the most part, ever since he's donned a Cleveland Browns jersey, he hasn't looked like the same player that he was in Houston. Even if he's like 60% of the player that he was in Houston, it doesn't matter. Once that cap hit comes into play, the Cleveland Browns Super Bowl window is shut. The worst part is they don't have a draft pick and they're tied to Deshaun Watson because this contract is quite literally impossible to get out of. At the end of the day, man, if the Cleveland Browns were so willing to give up 3 first-round picks for Deshaun Watson, they should have potentially done it for a quarterback that was on a rookie scale contract. I mean, do it for Bryce Young. I think Bryce Young on the Cleveland Browns would have made them Super Bowl contenders. I think CJ Stroud or Anthony Richardson on the Cleveland Browns would have made them Super Bowl contenders. Your Super Bowl window would be open for the next 4 years as well. Why would you go out and get an established QB and pay him a ridiculous sum of money and have a much smaller Super Bowl window? That doesn't make sense. Sometimes I wonder if the general managers in the NFL understand how the cap works. I mean, if you were trading for Deshaun Watson and wanted to keep Deshaun Watson on his existing contract from Houston, that's a completely different story. That would have even worked. Hell, the LA Rams did it with Matthew Stafford. Stafford was like the 8th highest paid QB in the NFL when he won the Super Bowl. And Deshaun Watson would have been like the 9th highest paid QB if the Cleveland Browns inherited his existing contract. The fact that they decided to pay him this ridiculous $230 million contract is what screwed them. And whether Deshaun Watson comes back and is healthy or not, the Cleveland Browns sabotaged what looks like their most promising roster ever since they returned to the NFL in 1999. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Hell, clip this, bookmark this, come back to it when the Cleveland Browns win the Super Bowl with Deshaun Watson hoisting up the Lombardi. I don't think that's ever gonna happen. I'd like to hear what you have to say. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.